Check one, check two.
I just like the thoroughly empty chairs.
Test, check. Test, check, test, good. If I were talking from here, it would sound like this. And if I were talking from here, I would sound like this.
Check one for upstairs. Check one for upstairs.
You want all the mics?
Yes, for now. We don't need them for now.
No, I need the chatter of the room.
Okay.
That's all.
For upstairs.
And this mic's live. So that's why everything's being live. So no, it's all good. It's just a hot mic. I just wanted to let you ladies know.
Hello, world. Welcome back.
Check, check.
If you have a seat, please get in it. If you see spaces, I don't need this. If you see spaces, move up and move in. We would like it to look completely full when we film. Move up and move in. Sit next to each other. You are a community now. You are with your new best friends. And your new best friends and you are going to stand together against oligarchy and eat the rich together, so you might as well sit close. See this row? Be friends. HB, you're so tall. I'm trying to put people. Can you see? Okay.
Watch your step.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome. We're so glad and proud our neighbors can be here and stand up together with Mondays with McCormick and Indivisible Pittsburgh. We're passing out some no, it's not literature. We're passing out a program. So you'll have a little bit of an idea of how we're going to go along. We've collected your questions in groups. We'll randomly pick 4 from each group. If your number is called, you're going to come up and sit on this bench so that you can come to the mic quickly and ask your question. After 4 questions, our guests, Connor Lamb and Lindsay Powell, will respond to those questions. So first, I'd like Connor Lamb and Lindsay Powell to come up onto our stage. Give them a warm Pittsburgh welcome. They're heroes to show up here when other people weren't willing to show up. And definitely show them how much we appreciate them. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, a little bit of housekeeping while they get seated. I hope your cell phones are off. Please stay seated and chill. We're recording, not only for news, but for some recordings of this event so we can push that information further forward. That's also why you see the QR codes around the room. If you can give, please give. Oh, and I'm Tracy Baton. Nice to meet you all, and thank you again.
Yeah.
So Joni's going to come up with our first group of questions. Come on. Am I drawing numbers? Oh, okay. Okay, these are questions about government. And I'm drawing 4, right? Yes. This one ends in 016.
Want me to read it? 984016.
This one ends in 013. Okay, go sit on the bench.
Go sit on the bench.
Time out.
This one ends in 007. And the last one ends in 008. Here's your bag. And if the first person on the bench could come forward and ask her question, their question.
Are we supposed to do some kind of intro or no? I guess not.
Hello, my name's Michaeline. My question comes from my daughter's experience. It's a bit long, but bear with me. At his recent phone town hall, speaking of recent market gyrations, Senator McCormick told constituents, over the long term, if we put these pro-growth policies in place, the economy's going to take off and the stock market's going to be just fine. I'm wondering whether I can believe anything members of the administration say. I'm wondering because of what happened to my daughter's job with Save the Children, a non-governmental organization that worked with USAID. She helped manage food sustainability programs in Africa for USAID. They were sending food grown by American farmers, including PA farmers, to Africa to feed the hungry. In February, the administration announced a 90-day review of all foreign aid. The review became a work stop, then a furlough, and finally, a termination of her job. USAID was dismantled illegally without any input from Congress. My daughter, who has 2 young boys, has lost her job, along with thousands of government employees and workers at CARE, Catholic Charities, Mercy Corps, etc., etc. What started as a 90-day review ended in job loss. I ask again, can I believe anything this administration says?
Sorry.
next question is going to come forward. They'll respond about the topic. Unless you want to respond now, that's up to you.
Either way, we didn't get a chance to even say hello yet, so maybe maybe Lindsay and I could each say hello real quick, and yeah, just take a crack at it, and then the next ones will be ready by the time that's done. It's great to see so many of you again. A lot of you I know and even had the privilege of representing, so I'll keep this part pretty short. But I did want to address, I don't know if you guys run into this, but people are always asking, like, what are we doing at things like this? You know, what's the point of speaking up? Is the rule of law gone? No one's listening, et cetera, et cetera. If we can't make them, change, then where is this all leading? And I think that's a really important question for us to just kind of hit squarely in the head right now. Because you see the most powerful people in our country, don't you? You see them using their power to get access to Trump and to please him, not to challenge him or hold him accountable. So you've got these law firms that are paying just to avoid being punished for practicing law. You've got all these media companies that are just paying Trump straight up. And you notice that the more that people bow down to him, the more power he starts to claim for himself. So this week, in the Oval Office, he made the claim, he talked openly about his ability to send American citizens to a foreign prison, a gulag. That actually happened in the last 48 hours. And he's already sent immigrants there, of course, including one who the Supreme Court has ordered him to help bring back, but he's ignoring that, because he thinks that he can do whatever he wants, to whoever he wants, whenever he wants to do it. But does that sound like a democracy to everyone in this room? No, I didn't think so. I know I was raised to believe that all of us, me, you, Democrats, Republicans, are created equal, that the equality that our country has believed in ever since the Declaration of Independence does not come from the president. It's not a privilege that he grants us. It was, I think the words are, endowed by our Creator. So it is not his to take away from us. Those are our rights. And that is the single idea, that comes from the Declaration of Independence is the single idea that Donald Trump has never accepted and will never accept. He wants to throw away people into these prisons. He wants to throw away people's jobs, like Michaeline's daughter. He wants to throw away money from your retirement account. I didn't even think I would see this, but he threw away billions of dollars from the value of American companies in the span of a few days last week.
Who's going to stop him?
Well, I think the reason that we're here tonight is to demonstrate, to actually physically demonstrate that our democracy is not Donald Trump's to throw away. And I'll stop so we can hear from Lindsay and get to the questions. But what he does is everything he does is so visible. He is always on your phones, on your screens. All the people in his administration, the whole cast of characters, they are so visible. But the things that brought us here tonight, the things we care about, the democracy, the rule of law, the strength of our Constitution, those things are not visible until we make them visible. And they are not real until we breathe life into them. People think this democracy is on life support, but it doesn't have to be. We can give it life. That belongs to all of us. The rights that we're talking about, the commitment to this country, it belongs to all of us. And the only mistake we can make is if we stop demonstrating that we're so committed to it that we'll show up to a town hall even when the seat is empty and you have a former congressman, not a real congressman, sitting here in front of you. Not that both of the Congress people in this area would be here in an instant answering your questions. We know it's other people that are the target, but that is my point. That is what we are doing here today. You are making it real. And I just thank you for letting me be a part of that. So.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Powell. I'm a state representative a little ways away in the 21st District. Thank you. But like the Congressman said, it is an honor and a privilege to be here with you all tonight. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. It is every single person taking time out of their busy lives and their schedules and their duties to stand up and fight back for what we know is right and what we know we deserve. What we deserve. And to the question asked, do we believe Trump? Yes. He showed us time and time again that he is a madman who does not care about our civil liberties. He doesn't care about our future. He doesn't care about the future of the American public. We need to believe him for everything he says he's going to do, because he's going to do it. And this time he's doing it without the guardrails. The first term that he had, I think he was testing it out, seeing what he could get away with. He had a cabinet of people that had some semblance of expertise, that were trying to kind of keep him contained, but he is released now. He's got the worst of the worst characters in his cabinet. No one is holding him back. So to the question, should we believe him for what he says he's going to do? Absolutely, and then worse. I think it is imperative that all of us in this room don't turn away from what we're looking at. I think it's very easy to say, you know what, I've got to just turn inward. I've got to think of my family. I've got to think of my neighbors and my community. But that's exactly what he wants. That's exactly what this administration wants, for us to close our eyes, to pretend like it's not happening, and just wait another 3 years so we can have another crack at it. If we wait too long, we might not have another crack at a democracy. And so again, I am grateful for all of you making time today to have your voices heard, and to share in this space together of advocacy and action.
Hello. Thank you for being here. My question is for Senator McCormick. Yeah, I know. In the ether. You wore the uniform of the U.S. Armed Services. How can you stand by and parrot the "he made a mistake" line when the signal chat put the lives of U.S. airmen in harm's way? Why aren't you calling for resignations?
Yes. Yeah.
This is for Senator Fetterman. What exactly happened to you at Mar-a-Lago? You came back a changed man.
Hi, my name is Sally Rafson, and my question is, why has the Congress rolled over and not been standing up for our rights? We have three parts of our country, of our democracy. There's the judicial system, there's the Congress, and there's the president. And those are supposed to be working to not support each other, but providing guards. And our Congress and Fetterman, I agree with the gentleman who just spoke, Fetterman has just rolled over as a democratically elected senator. And where's the Congress? That's my question.
So I could, lots of thoughts here. So it has been terrifying to see, as an elected official myself, who relies very deeply on our partnerships with the federal government, how we don't have partners who are standing up for us. You can clap for that. It has been terrifying to see how elected officials who are supposed to be beholden to us, who are supposed to stand up for us, who are supposed to advocate for us, are nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found, aren't responding to our calls, aren't listening to our letters, aren't letting our voices be heard. I am worried, candidly, for the future of Pennsylvania. We as Pennsylvanians, we as Pittsburghers deserve more. We deserve leaders that are going to be responsible and receptive We deserve leaders that are going to acknowledge us at the very least and show up to actually address their constituents rather than being nowhere to be found. Trump's agenda is so dangerous, overtly dangerous, aggressively dangerous, dangerous without any repercussions, no moral compass here. He said it, as I said before, time and time again, the harm, the destruction, and the terror that he wants to bring to our country. And to know that we are absent leaders in DC that are going to be standing up for us is terrifying. But again, I am grateful that we have representatives in Congressman DeLuzio and Congresswoman Lee who are fighting back against our own party. I think too, as Democrats, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of looking in the mirror to do. We have a lot of self-reflection to do. Because we can't keep losing elections because this country depends on our leadership. This country depends on our leadership because we could be talking about a very different future in the next 4 years if we are not organizing, if we are not agitating, and if we are not acting right now to hold the Democratic Party accountable and to make sure that our leadership is not only reflective of what we want to see, but is responsible to us right here, right now.
You know, I think three of those questions had something very much in common, which was, you know, Michaeline asked about, like, McCormick, he's this businessman, why is he out there saying the economy's going to boom when it doesn't seem true? You know, he wore the uniform, but it seems like he doesn't care about Signalgate. And then with Senator Fetterman, you have this sort of lifetime of public service in which he claims to have certain priorities about the minimum wage or helping people who are underdogs or being counted out. And it seems like those have really shifted. In both cases, it's hard to understand the way they're behaving in office in light of who they have been for so much of their professional lives. And I think that when that happens, their obligation is to explain that to you who hired them. You know, you might not have all voted for them, but their job exists for you. You know, you under the Constitution, you, the people, are the foundation of the entire government. You know, their job is obviously to represent you. And the idea that they don't have to answer questions like the ones that you just asked is completely foreign to the kind of government that we're supposed to have. And I know senators in particular get away with it all the time or have gotten away with it. That doesn't make it right. And that brings in the last question that was asked about the role of Congress. You know, I had this teacher in college who had one visual aid in his entire Intro to American Politics course. And he would take Article 1 of the Constitution. It was many pages of paper taped together like this, and he would let it unfurl. And then he would show Article 2 of the Constitution, which was one paper because there's barely anything in it. Article 1 is Congress. Article 2 is the president. So if I were to ask you, which one of those do you think that the Constitution writers intended to be more powerful? The one that they gave all the powers to on the long several sheets of paper, or the one that they gave barely any powers to? And that's what I don't get. You know, if a staffer for one of these senators is watching us, you know, I'd just say, you could be doing so much more on the issues you care about. Both of these men could have such loud voices, and they could play a role in making the Senate a place where there is independence of thought again, and where ideas get challenged even when they come within your own party, and where they can investigate things and get to the truth and actually, like, enforce you know, the law. I mean, that's really part of what they should be doing, and they're not. And I don't understand why they all go along with it, but I'm glad that at least you didn't accept the idea that they're supposed to just go along with whatever the, you know, party requires of them, because that's not a senator in my view. So.
Absolutely.
I'm not supposed to comment, but I have to say we are not going to be ableist in this space. I don't know what happened in Mar-a-Lago, but Conor Lamb was always the better choice. Me and my friend Michelle Kinney knocked doors till the last day for Conor Lamb. So always the better choice. Nothing changed. It was just sometimes the scales fall off your eyes.
Biblical.
This category is criminal justice. Yeah, you get it here, girl. They're going to be all mad at me if I bang this microphone. Look, what did you do? Okay. Look, I have a lot of them. Okay, this number is, it ends in 0. It ends in 4010. The next one, 4021. The next one, 4004. Do I see, please sit on the bench?
Your prize is to go to the bench.
Nobody's going to the bench. 4009. I know, there's no prizes. Well, the prize is to get to sit on the bench. That is the prize. And we'll come forward. Ms. Brenda, why don't you go ahead for your emotion. Here we go. I believe you. We're believing people.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Brenda Tate. My question is, I have spent 40 years as a police officer for the city of Pittsburgh. And 40 years ago, I took an oath to protect and serve. The rule of law, to me, is critical. It pains me to no end, and as an African American woman with African American boys, my boys can get picked up off the street, head shaved, and put on a plane somewhere, and I may never see them again. There was a 9-0 decision to bring that man home. This is bigger than Mr. Garcia. This is slave trade here. I'm going to be that bold because I have to keep tabs on my sons now because they defy the rule of law.
My question's about in that area too. How can we have the courts enforce their verdicts against Trump when our elected officials don't even say anything about the fact that they're not being enforced?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Gibbs. This question is for my senators who aren't here. The case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia is kidnapping, forcible lawless detention, lawless deportation, trafficking, human rights abuse, lawless placement of a human being in a concentration camp. Aside from all those assaults on humanity, why have you, my senators, allowed U.S. taxpayer money to be used for this action?
Hello, my name is Rocky Sowers, and we've all watched this circus play out for how many days now? I don't know how many it is. It seems like 10 years. But my question is, what recourse is available if the president and his administration is held in contempt of court? Because it seems to me that anybody that would be responsible to take action, it'd be at the U.S. Marshals, the Justice Department, anyone who could do anything is firmly under Donald Trump's control. So what would this look like? What happens?
Look, here's how this is supposed to work. When your senators, when the various law enforcement officials, the president himself, when they took their oaths to the Constitution, one of the things that they were swearing to accept and abide by was the idea that when you make decisions in criminal justice, you have to respect the rights of other people, even if you think they've done something wrong. Like, I've been a federal prosecutor. That is a core part of what it means to have a job like that. It is drilled into you from the very beginning. So that's why I say that what Trump and Stephen Miller and all these people are demonstrating is an attitude that does not apply to them at all. It's not an attitude that they have a different interpretation. Remember when President Bush was president, or these different Roberts and Alito and all of them got put onto the Supreme Court. They had a different interpretation of the Constitution, right? They wanted the Constitution to mean in the 21st century what it meant in the 18th century. Okay, I guess you can have that debate. The attitude that they are demonstrating is that these rules, this whole concept of a government in which you have to think about other people's rights and limitations on your own action, doesn't apply to them at all. So what happens in that situation? First is the justices of the Supreme Court have to do more than what they did in that decision last week. It was a fine start. These are extremely well-educated justices who know how to dial in their words to a very specific degree as to what needs to happen, and that needs to happen now. Your question about contempt and the U.S. Marshals and that kind of thing, I don't think we know that until it happens. It'll be an interesting moment of loyalty test for the marshals that happen to be in that courtroom. But ultimately, as much as I don't want to move the conversation away from the horror that is happening to this man being put in a gulag, and the fact, as Brenda raised, that now the president thinks it could happen to anyone, including her own family members and many others. But what is ultimately going to happen here is if Trump defies the Supreme Court in a visible enough way, what happened last week with the tariffs is going to happen all over again. The whole reason that the American economy is what it is and that investors all around the world look at us and care about our markets and want to invest here and all that kind of thing is because they think we have a stable rule of law. Like, that has actual economic value. The bond market may enforce Abrego Garcia's rights better than any of us can. We don't know that, but my suspicion is that that's what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I want to say too, Ms. Tate, thank you so much for your service as well. We are not here by happenstance, right? We are not here because we've had a few missteps along the way that we just happen to kind of stumble upon these conservative judges. I want to say that first and foremost, that one of the things that has been most devastating experiencing this Trump administration is this is strategy. This is strategy, this is strategy, this is strategy. There have been Republican strategists for 20 plus years putting together the perfect storm of being able to control the executive, judicial, and legislative branches. So when to the earlier question we were talking about guardrails and balance, we are not here because we had one bad election. We are not here because, a few people sat it out. We are here because people designed it to be this way. So I want to raise that point first and foremost. Mr. Garcia's case, I think, shows us again how dangerous the times that we are living in are. So the fears that we could be snatched off of the street, that a friend, that a neighbor, that a teacher, that a doctor, that an advocate could be snatched off the street are real. I shudder to think that if we aren't able to rein this in, if we aren't able to bring Mr. Garcia home, that we will see this over and over and over again. Even in our own backyard here in Pittsburgh, we have advocates that work largely in the Latino and immigrant and migrant communities that are terrified to go outside, terrified to worship, terrified to go to the grocery store, that are relying on people, the rest of our community, to ensure that they have the resources that they need. We cannot become a country that is hostile and unwelcoming to our own. We can't, or else the dream of this nation falls and dies right in front of us.
Absolutely. Joni, this is a Mennonite church, and the Supreme Court just ruled that police can come in this church. In past times, Mennonites have helped refugees and immigrants by having them live in our churches, but now the police can come here and ICE can take someone from our church. Those cops, though, they can't come in. We're Mennonites, we don't let them in. Yes, this coupon, 4022, immigration. These are questions about immigration. 4022, 4003, and 4014. Please come to the bench. Well, you're up. Just come on up here. Where are these other people? Don't be shy. You put in the ticket. Just get it on. Oh, look, you don't have to ask. Look at that. They get mad at me because I'm bad at this. So I'm mad at it.
I'm Rebecca Lewis. I'm from McCandless. Thank you both for being here. I super appreciate it. And I'm a former constituent of Connor Lamb's, and really delighted that you are making, that you came out. So I want to preface my question by giving you a quote from Cory Booker. And what he said was, patriotism is not a flag. It's not a salute. It's not a pledge. Patriotism is love. Patriotism is love of country. And you can't love our country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. Love is saying, I will sacrifice myself for your well-being. So Senator Van Hollen arrived in El Salvador today, and in doing so, he sacrificed his personal safety and his political safety to help free Kilmer Garcia. California Congressman Robert Garcia and another colleague requested today a CODO, hope I pronounced that right, to visit CCOT, the prison where Mr. Garcia is being held, thus sacrificing their political safety as well. So my question to you, Senator Fetterman and McCormick, what are you sacrificing to gain the release of the unlawful deportation and cruel imprisonment of Maryland's Kilmer Garcia? He deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Verde, and I work at Casa San Jose. We work a lot with the Latino community in the city of Pittsburgh. My question is to Senator Fetterman. I was married to a man from Mexico for almost 20 years. We tried to do things the right way. However, part of that was his return to Mexico. He had to return for 10 years before he could apply to re-enter. I went and lived with him in Mexico for 10 years. However, a year before the 10 years was up, he died in a work-related accident in Mexico because the standards are not the same. So as we speak of the people in El Salvador and the people who are being deported, it is life or death, and our immigrant neighbors know that. So originally, Mr. Fetterman, your platform was around comprehensive immigration reform due to your own wife's immigration struggles. Now it appears you are backing down from or even supporting these other anti-immigrant policies of our current administration. What do you say to this? How long are American wives, children, mothers, and fathers supposed to wait to do it the right way?
Thank you both for those important and critical questions. Myself, I'm the granddaughter of an immigrant. My grandfather came from Panama through Ellis Island and made a life for himself and our family decades ago. And I have been deeply involved in the immigration process, working at the federal level for other senators, trying to make sure that our immigration process, which is deeply, deeply, deeply broken, is the little tiniest bit responsive to people in need. I could not agree with you more that we have so many mothers, brothers, sisters, cousins, nieces, nephews whose lives are on hold, whose lives are on pause, waiting to go through the immigration process the right way. But the right way often necessitates tens of thousands of dollars. Sponsors from all across the country, letters of recommendation, affidavits, wait some more, living in fear because you don't have the right documentation, living in fear because you don't know at any given moment, even before the Trump administration, you don't know at any given moment that you could be picked up and stopped for no reason. Thank you, too, to the groups within Pittsburgh, like GASA, like AJAPO, like JFCS, that are doing the hard work to make sure that Pittsburgh and Southwestern PA and Pennsylvania is a welcoming state. If we can't find a way to love our neighbors, to safeguard our neighbors, to make sure that they're able to succeed and thrive in our beautiful state, then we're not doing our job being good Americans and being good countrymen. Our immigration process, as I said, is deeply broken. It takes privilege, it takes access, and more than anything, it takes luck. I've worked so many cases where you have the most heartbreaking story, mothers separated from their children, wanting to come back to the country, upstanding citizens that for a traffic infraction were sent back to unsafe and frankly dangerous living conditions, dangerous countries of origin. We clearly have two senators, especially one with lived experience, who are not standing up for our immigrant brothers and sisters and neighbors. And if this country, if this state, if we cannot continue to be the welcoming community, the welcoming neighborhoods that we ought to be, then shame on us. Shame on us.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. I think the argument that you would hear from someone like McCormick or someone in his party, if they were here, was that the level of illegal immigration got so high that the task of trying to address that within the United States now is so daunting that you have to be able to do things that seem unusual to people. I think that is what they would say. The issue is, there are a lot of issues with that, but one of which is, you can't go around rounding people up, arresting them, moving them to different states, putting them in cells, and assume that no one in law enforcement is going to make a mistake or violate someone's rights or beat someone up or mistreat them or do even worse. It's just what happens when people are trying to enforce the law. The whole reason that we have an abstract concept like due process, meaning put them in front of a judge of some kind, an independent fact finder of some kind, is because you have to rein this kind of thing in, both to honor the Constitution, like we keep talking about, but also to have effective law enforcement. You know, I'm sure there's not a person in this room that doesn't think it's an important job for our government to protect people from violent crime, right? I think most people agree on that. Well, the one agency that's most responsible for violent crime in this country is the ATF, and Trump has reassigned almost all of the ATF agents to immigration enforcement, to do things like we saw what happened to Rumeysa Ozturk, a person who wrote an op-ed, and all of a sudden she's getting snatched off the streets by people in masks who aren't even displaying their badges. Or to go after Abrego Garcia, about whom there is no evidence that he committed any kind of gang crime, no matter how many times they say it. So you have to ask yourself, you know, if these are the people that ICE and now the ATF are being told to go after, like, what about the actual violent criminals? Is anybody addressing them, or is anyone, you know, I mean, that's harder, right? That's harder. Yeah, don't even get into January 6th and what all that has meant. And by the way, you know, there's another question here about our tax dollars, right? Because now we're being told that we can't afford Medicaid, but we can afford to pay El Salvador for this gulag that they're running for all these people, right? So that's the use of our tax dollars. And apparently they want to set up a reparations fund for the January 6th defendants as well. So the question that you might ask to a Senator McCormick or a Senator Fetterman is not even, I don't even know if we're asking them to sacrifice anything. I mean, can't you just stand up on the Senate floor and raise a few of these questions? Can't you insist on an answer about how this money is being spent?
What's this collection of questions? What's our topic? These are about social welfare. And I need 4018 and 4012. I think I heard this week that they ended education around domestic violence for federal officers. And domestic violence is such a hallmark for other kinds of violence that, like, domestic violence is not okay, but when you find other criminals, they usually start there. Our first question, come on. You were gonna run away, but you can.
Hi, my name is Pam Keene. I just retired on October 4th. I ran the Children's Home and Lemieux Family Center on Penn Avenue for 31 years. I have no pension. I'm going to be relying on Social Security. I think that's a really popular topic in this room. I had so many questions, I didn't even know where to begin. So I'm going to ask you this one. In Nevada and Arizona, the attorneys general have implemented a system online to report any disruptions to Social Security. And would there be a way that we could do something? I think it would be a tremendous bipartisan effort to make the Democrats look like the good guys and putting something out to the population where they could report if they were having any disruptions. And so I wondered maybe if you thought this was a great idea. Now, I know our Attorney General in Pennsylvania happens to be a Republican. Yeah, boo. But anyway, thinking maybe there could be a deposit place that this would fit. So that's my question.
All right. What do you think? Sure. State law, is there anything we can do?
I will say first, I think unfortunately it necessitates a lot of our Republicans in the state house to recognize that this is an issue. I talk to so many colleagues who unfortunately are like, people are panicking for no reason. Everything will be fine. Don't you worry, the president knows what he's doing. Lies, falsehoods, deceit, we know that. And so unfortunately, in our Pennsylvania legislature, it gets to be a little interesting sometimes because we've got a very divided House and Senate. As you all know, the House is majority Democrat and the Senate by one seat. By one seat, it's 102 to 101. And in the Senate, it is majority Republican. And then we have a Democratic governor, which makes working together always an exciting time. But I will say, I think in order for us to do something like that, it necessitates a lot of my colleagues to recognize that this is a deep fear that all of our constituents have. I know in the 21st district, we get calls all the time about what's gonna happen to my Social Security? What's gonna happen to my Medicaid, Medicare? How am I supposed to be able to take care of myself now that I've retired and exited the workforce? We need to be innovative, and that's something that I've stressed to many of my colleagues, several of my colleagues, that we can't sit and be reactive. We can't wait for the other shoe to drop. We need to be thinking right here and right now about all the programs, policies, and solutions that we can be baking, we can be working on to ensure that when it comes to that, oh, it'll never happen, when it happens, we're ready.
Yeah, I just want to say, I had to learn a lot about Social Security as a member of Congress because it's one of the most frequent calls that you get to your congressional office is people who are having some kind of payment problem with Social Security and their calls to the normal Social Security offices weren't getting anywhere. So there is like a huge demand for these offices where people can call and get a human on the phone and even go in and speak to someone in person. It's not just some legacy government thing where people are twiddling their thumbs. It's also a trivial, tiny cost of the overall value of running Social Security. So you're not saving any money by closing these offices or cutting the phone lines or whatever. I saw Representative DeLuzio the other day was putting out that apparently they're being told not even to answer questions from members of Congress anymore, which was, one of the most important pipelines that we had to try to help our constituents. So it tells you, why would they be messing around with the phone system and with the access that people can have to report an issue unless they did think that benefit cuts of some kind were going to come and they wanted to do everything they could to cast doubt on people that complain about them, right? I mean, and just sort of continue to put out there that this isn't really happening, it's not really real, it's just a bunch of cranks and fraudsters, rather than admit that what they're doing is basically violating a contract that you had with your government. Every paycheck where your 6% comes out for all those years. Anybody in here pay into Social Security for more than 40 years? I bet we have some. 50 years? I bet we even have some of those. Yeah. So all those years, and all of a sudden, Elon Musk wasn't even in the United States when you started paying into that program. And here he is. He gets to renegotiate the contract that you thought was so sacred. It just is it's a crazy thing for them to try to do. Obviously, it's going to be massively unpopular, but it looks to me like they think they can manage that by messing around with what people understand is happening. So, the only other thing I'll say about that is don't ever in your life, for a moment, hear someone say that we cannot afford Social Security as a country because, it's not like it was after World War II, et cetera, the generations are different. That just isn't true. Mathematically, that is not true. The only problem that Social Security has right now is that when it was planned and thought out, people didn't realize how unequal the society was going to become. They didn't, and you probably know that Social Security, you stop paying into it after a certain level, about $175,000 or $180,000 a year. They didn't know that the people who make more than that were going to earn so much more of the money than everyone else. And so a lot of the wealth being created in our country was never making it into Social Security. They didn't know that. Okay, so in a normal functioning democracy, what you do is you draft up a bill to fix that. You change the income caps or you get rid of them completely so that rich people have to pay the whole year, whatever, and you have all the money that you need. That's simple.
It's a radical idea.
Senator
Evil, there's an idea. Our next group of questions are on social welfare, and they are 4012, 4020, and 4019. Y'all are shy. Please sit on the bench if I called your number.
I think Elisa gets to go straight to the mic. That's my vote. Yeah.
If I go next to it, there we go. Do this for a second. So I have a twofold question for you. One is Pennsylvania, especially. There are over 3 million people in the state of Pennsylvania who rely on Medicaid for their basic health care needs. I'm one of those people. I will absolutely die if I don't have Medicaid because I will lose access to all my medications. You know, dear senators who deign to be here, you know, what are you doing to make sure that Medicaid is saved for all 3 million of those people and not just a select few who might fit some like super secret criteria that you've made up on the spot? Second half of that, there are now 17 states actively involved in a class action lawsuit to try to overturn Section 504, which is basically a part of the law that protects disability rights and access to services in any federally funded institution, including things like being able to access doctors and things like that. They are trying to overturn 504, which will get rid of disability protections for, you know, a quarter of the population in this country. What are you doing to help protect your constituents?
I think I can get this. Hi, I'm Rock Kernick, and this is a question about social welfare after a fashion. And it is for Senator McCormick, who I know is new here and may not understand our situation, and Senator Fetterman, who spent a long time living in Braddock and really should know better. But my question concerns my little municipality of Hampton and our fear that the dismantling of the EPA is going to have a big effect on the cracker plant, which, you know, we love. There's lots of jobs there, but it's hard enough to control it right now. How are you going to keep control of it by dismantling all of the regulations? Thank you.
Yeah, let me try to address Elisa's question first about Medicaid. Maybe we can both do that one and then do the EPA. You know, I think what bothers me so much about the fact that you even have to ask that question and the fact that we're debating these issues about Medicaid right now is what I understand to be the Republican position is that they basically want to be the ones to decide who qualifies for health care coverage or not. They don't want it to be determined by a person's actual need, which is how health insurance usually works. But, you know, they want to say if a person is, you know, able-bodied enough to work and all this other kind of thing. And I think if one of them were, you know, if McCormick or Mike Johnson or something like that was sitting on the stage right now, he'd say, no, Elisa, you don't have anything to worry about. We understand that you deserve this. And that's the whole problem, right? Is like no one elected Mike Johnson to be the adjudicator of people's right to have health care coverage in the United States. They just didn't. That's not what he's there for. And by the way, like on this whole question of creating new work requirements for people or what they want to do, does this administration strike anyone as a group of people that's good at paperwork? And like applying criteria to people and answering their questions and taking calls and looking at their application? Like, of course not. Every day they're dismantling our ability to do that across like every domain of the federal government. They're not going to be able to handle some new regime of Medicaid that looks at whether people are working or not. I mean, Medicaid is a work-enabling program. Like a lot of people, if you get them access to the health care coverage they need, they're much more able to go out and work in a United States that has had less than 4% unemployment for years. Like lack of able-bodied people in the workforce is not actually the major economic problem in this country. So none of this, their explanation really adds up. What it tells you is that either they're lying when they say that they want to cut $800 billion or whatever the number is from the committee that controls Medicaid, or they're either just not going to do that. They're going to pass up on these cuts and lie about the deficit savings that they're going to have, or they're going to establish a program that takes health care away from a lot of people. It's one or the other. I mean, they're not going to save your money and keep everybody on the same health care that they had before. So it's one or the other. And I just think, if we're asking someone to bear the cost of the federal deficit, bringing the budget back in line and whatever, why are we starting with the people who are just trying to get through every day, with the health care coverage that they need? Why that's not the first place we turn?
And I think on top of that, just want to emphasize that there is no backfill in Pennsylvania, right? Our Medicaid system is about $50 billion, let's call it. $50 billion, excuse me. The state of Pennsylvania contributes $20 million. The federal government, $30 million. There is no way in Pennsylvania that we are able to then backfill that missing $30 million if we're not able to make that, if we're not able to receive that from the federal government. We get calls every single day asking about what can we do? Is there any, rainy day fund money that we can use to maybe backstop our Medicaid system if the federal government significantly pulls out of this program, significantly underfunded? The answer is no. There are no couch cushions we can look under. There's no recycling cans, recycling that we can cash in. This is it. And so it's imperative, again, that we are being clear-throated with our senators that you cannot back down on this. Millions of Americans, millions of Pennsylvanians depend on this. And there's no solution that the House, the Senate of Pennsylvania, as hard as we may try, that can come up with to remedy a massive removal of federal dollars in our Medicaid funding.
Yeah, and before I turn to the EPA question, I thought of, I think it was either yesterday or today, Senator McCormick was actually doing some kind of public event, I think in State College with business people, and there was some reporter there who cleverly understood that the Republicans are having a hard time with these dual promises they're making, right? They're saying they're not going to cut Medicaid, but they're also saying they're going to somehow cut $800 billion from it at the same time. So the reporter asked, well, is it true that you guys are considering maybe raising one tax on people that make over $1 million a year? That has been floated by some people, not Senator McCormick. And his answer was, oh, we can't do that. Working families would never support something like that. That's actually what he said. That was his answer. Working families will never support millionaires being taxed additionally on their income that they were. So that kind of tells you where we are. Rock, the EPA, this is one of those things we actually saw in Trump 1, how bad that it can get. They just chase people out. They just chase out the scientists who establish the actual facts around which we can have a debate. I mean, you can have disagreements about, is the cost or benefit of this or that plant or industrial project, that we want to have in Pennsylvania worth having. You can only really have that debate if someone has established what level of mercury actually harms people and these different air pollutants, how much of them you can have being emitted at what rate. Even something like natural gas, which they'll be quick to say, oh, it emits half as much carbon as coal. Well, not if the pipeline infrastructure is leaking methane everywhere it goes in. And who do you think does the testing and the science behind that? The EPA, right? So we're going to pretty quickly get to a point where we may not know what the United States is actually emitting as far as carbon dioxide and many other harmful things. And it becomes harder at that point then to even regulate or to have an intelligent discussion about where we should go. And that's They never quite got there in Trump 1, where they warped the entire debate by concealing the facts. But on all these things, whether it's environmental facts or even just something like the unemployment numbers or the economic growth numbers, at this point, it looks like they don't really want to be honest about what the data shows, as if it doesn't fit their narrative. And that's, in a roundabout way, what makes things like this so important. It has to be, I think they think environment is like a low-level concern for people that maybe ranks 8th or 10th and only educated people care about and that kind of thing. And I think they have to be proven that's not the case.
I have to just add that this administration doesn't care about facts. Full stop. They don't care about facts, they don't care about science, they don't care about data, and it shows.
Definitely a war on truth. Our last collection of questions. Am I doing something wrong, Joni? Joni got to watch me, because you know. These are related to government. You get 2 more. It's the. Okay, thank you. They are 4015, 4017, 4006, and 4005. They come forward to the bench. And I'm going to ask my question while they're coming forward. If I could ask Senator Fetterman and Senator McCormick a question, it would be, you have been remarkably quiet about reproductive rights. Does that mean you're going to support them? They do not want us in the street for our birth control and our abortion, so they've been very quiet. Our next person. Thank you for indulging.
My name is Barry Alfonso, and I'll keep the question short. Are the mechanisms of our democracy too slow to stop Trump? It is a long way until November 2026.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can respond to that one. In the short term, the truthful answer has proven to be yes. I mean, the judges are acting too slow. Obviously, the Senate has basically thrown up his hands. I mean, we couldn't even get legitimate opposition to the idea of funding Trump's ability to do all these things. I mean, as someone noted earlier in their question, I was glad you brought it up. We, the taxpayers, are paying $6 million to Nayib Bukele to run this gulag for people that come out of the United States with our tax money. And that was Trump doesn't print that money himself. He doesn't have like a Scrooge McDuck, thing of gold coins over there in the White House that he gets to pay this. Congress has to give him that. That's how that part of the system still operates. And we couldn't even get legitimate opposition to the idea that this guy doesn't get any more money until he proves that he actually understands some limits on his power. So in the short term, the truthful answer is yes. In the medium to long term, I think the truthful answer is that it's up to us. And at many, many other times in American history, this question has been posed. It has seemed dark and hopeless to people. And someone, some way, found the courage over a long period of time to stand up, not once, but twice, in much more dangerous situations than anything I've ever faced. And a lot of people have given a lot more than I've ever been asked to give. So I think it's the least we can do to try, right? It was given to us. I think the least we can do is try to give it to the next generation after us.
I did want to say something about reproductive rights, though, because I think it is important. We have been asleep at the wheel. That's how we lost Roe. We were asleep at the wheel. Because you see in other countries that have reproductive freedom, reproductive justice, they were able to fortify it in legislation and policy. We are not taking Roe, we are not taking our reproductive freedom for granted here in Pennsylvania. Myself, several colleagues are working on legislation to codify our God forbid whatever happens at the federal level, we've got us in Pennsylvania. Because we can't go back, we won't go back. And we know how dangerous it is to go back to a time where we saw women and birthing people put themselves in precarious situations, in dangerous relationships, and dangerous spaces because they didn't have access to the rights, cares, and freedoms that they deserve. And so I appreciate you bring that up because it is so important that we are looking inward, that we are looking in Pennsylvania, and that we are codifying and ensuring that our rights and protections are free, safe, and accessible here in Pennsylvania. So thank you for raising that, Tracy. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Susan McCarthy from Pittsburgh, and nice to see you, Senator Liam, and thank you so much, Representative Powell, for talking to us tonight. This has been very refreshing. I voted for you because I liked your agenda, and that's what my question is about tonight. I hear on the news a lot, and I hear elected officials on both sides, Republican and Democrat, mostly Republicans, say that the Democratic Party, our main problem is we do not have an agenda. I frankly totally disagree. I know what our agenda was. I voted for our agenda. But I ask you, what do you think the agenda is of the Democratic Party currently, and what do we need to do to strengthen that agenda for the future?
All right. How about an actual office photo?
I was going to say, how much time do you have? So I know what our agenda is when it comes to what we fight for in the 21st District, what we fight for as the majority party in the House of Representatives, and it is fighting for our neighbors. It is making sure that our working families, making sure that our neighbors and our communities have everything that they need to not just survive, but to thrive in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's not enough, and it will never be enough that we only show up when election cycles, happen, right? It's not enough that we are only thinking about the most among us. It is not enough if we're not building a platform and building an agenda that speaks to all of our lived experiences. What I struggle with as a Democrat and a lifelong Democrat is that how do we make sure that our message resonates? As someone who worked on the executive side for many years, and I always say legislators get to dream and put together legislation and policy, and the executive side has to figure out exactly how to do it, right? How to actually make that legislation, make those words real and make it tangible for our neighbors. How do we ensure that our message as Democrats not just resonates, but people feel the message, that people know that what we're fighting for, whether it's affordable groceries and medication, whether it's safe communities, whether it's a thriving economy that includes all of us, how do we make sure that our words are not just seen, but felt in everyday life? And that's where I think we struggle as a party. Solutions bring votes. People vote because they see the hard work that happens in DC or in Harrisburg, because they feel it, they vote because they see it affect them, right? That's what gets people to the polls, when they have hardships or experiences that have been rectified, have been remedied, have been mitigated by good policy. And I think that that's the hardest part about where we are as a Democratic Party, because a lot of times our neighbors and our communities don't feel the impact of our policies. Lastly, I'll say, and I think I've said it a few times this evening, it's vision and strategy. When I talk to neighbors, when I hit the doors for several candidates, many of whom are actually in this room, when I knock doors for folks, oftentimes the biggest critique is, well, what's next? What's the Democratic Party building towards? As we've talked about tonight, the Republican Party has had strategy for 20 plus years on how to make an America that reflects their visions and their goals for the future. Are we doing the same thing? Are we investing in the right candidates? But more importantly, are we investing in our communities and our neighbors so that we have grassroots, that we have progressive, that we have innovative policy making and policy, policy strategy that reflects what we want to see in the world? And so I struggle with this question, and I appreciate you bringing it up because I think we have the right pieces to this puzzle, but we still need to make sure that our message and that our vision resonates with everyday Pittsburghers, everyday Pennsylvanians, everyday Americans.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly to that because that was a great answer. I think she answered it fully. I've learned two things in my time as a trial lawyer that I think are relevant here. One is, if you think you've proven your case really well, and you stand up for the closing argument, and some people on the jury look kind of confused, or they're giving you the stink eye, and they're kind of bored, and they want to get out of there, you haven't proven your case really well. No matter how great you think you are, if they're the decision makers and they're not quite buying it, you have more work to do. And I think our party needs to just accept that. The second is that when someone comes to see me now, and I represent plaintiffs who have typically had very, very bad things happen to them, and they need to hire a lawyer to go fight for something. They don't want to engage in a philosophical discussion of how should lawyers be? What is it generally that lawyers do or stand for? What is the grand strategy of lawyers in your law firm? They want to know, these are my basic interests. This is what happened to me and where I am. Are you on my side? As FDR would call it, are you on my side of the street? Are you walking on the same side of the street as me? And so I just kind of think as a party, there was a lot of talking after the election that was just about talking. It was a lot of podcasts. Should we talk this way? Should we talk this way? Should we go on Joe Rogan? What kind of words should we use? I just think we pick a few interests and defend them. For me, Social Security is a hill that we should die on. That is a very, very important cause. That Elisa has health care next year and the year after that and every year after that as long as she needs it is another hill that we should die on, and everyone like her. And there are people counting on Social Security, counting on Medicaid, counting on a number of these things all over the country who fit every single political description. And right now, just a lot of them don't know that we're their best advocate. And we have to we don't have to talk about that. We have to demonstrate it. We have to get out there and do it. And I think that's going to get us most of the way to where we need to be.
Hello, my name's Janet Ingram, and I was trying to picture John Fetterman up here. So I said, "Dear Senator Fetterman, don't forget us, listen to us. We are your constituents. Tell us what we can work together to accomplish. Is it protection of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Is it protection of free speech? Is it oversight of cuts to federal programs? What are you willing to work with us on? I am not the enemy, but I am very angry about my senators being invisible and not willing to stand up for any of these issues."
Hi, welcome. My name's Elaine. I'm from McCandless. My question is more of a statement and a call to action. The hands-off protests and the rise in participation in town halls show that there's a lot of energy out there. People are scared and angry, and we need leaders who can express that and demonstrate that kind of concern. We also need a cohesive message that reflects what we stand for and how it will help everyday Americans. We need to know if you can carry that responsibility and be those leaders. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't hear anything you just said. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for your questions here tonight. Those were two great ones to end on. I will just say, if anyone from the staff of either of our senators or the many Republican congressmen who also don't hold town halls, if any of you are watching, I want you to know this is a very comfortable chair they've provided up here for us on the stage. It really has been pleasant. I have not been interrupted once, shouted down. It's probably one of the more courteous and law-abiding crowds I've ever been in front of. And my guess is it would be similar if one of them gave you the chance to do this in front of them. No, it would be, right? I mean, it would be. You want to hear what they have to say. If you want to hold them accountable, you have to be able to ask them questions and have them answer. So I hope they will reconsider the way that they are running their office. And I think if they did, you know, they might hear that there are people at this event right now, like our last questioner, who actually do want to do something constructive with these senators and with these representatives and see if there's a possibility to meet halfway or make some inch of progress, even if a foot is impossible. And that's what they're supposed to be doing. I don't think they should harbor these misconceptions that if they hold a town hall, you know, Antifa's going to show up and shout them down every time they try to talk. That isn't what happens, because if you only ever hold one town hall a decade, maybe the energy gets a little pent up and people aren't sure how to act. But, you know, I held a lot of these. I know Lindsay does. I know DeLuzio and Summer and all them do. When you do enough of them, you know, plenty of people come who don't agree with you, but they're not angry all the time, and they don't protest outside your office because they know they're going to get a chance to speak and to be listened to. And as long as we keep doing that, as long as we, even when they're not here, as long as we keep demonstrating that those are our values, that value you place, which all emanates from the idea that this is a country where people have some kind of equal moral standing, that your senator is no better than you, you're no better than them, they should have to sit here and answer your questions because you voted for them. As long as we still keep that idea alive, it's going to be terrifying and annoying thinking about what Trump does every day, but that he is on the wrong track, and he is the one who is out of step with reality in the United States, not you.
I'll be brief because I know I'm standing between dinner for a lot of people. There is a James Baldwin quote that I'm going to hope to do justice, but essentially it's, I love America so much that I've earned the right to be deeply critical, right? That we are in this room, we are fighting for this democracy because we love this country, and that's why we're critical, because we know that we can be better and that we deserve better, and we deserve representatives in Congress and in the Senate to ensure that our voices are heard and that we're able to continue to love this country, that we have a country in the next 4, 8, 16 years that we can continue to love and continue to be critical of, because that is our right, that is our duty, to course correct, to gently guide, to push, to shove where we need to make sure that we are on the right direction and that we are always moving towards justice, moving towards progress, moving towards a better union. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for spending your evening with us.
And just, hey, before you get carried away, hold on, save that. Just one point of privilege there. These events actually take a ton to put together. I didn't always appreciate that before. You know, I wasn't being whisked on and off the stage by staff members. Now I get here and I get to see how it's all done. So we have one translator on stage. We have Tracy. We have a number of people who did sound and video and volunteering. Just please thank them for doing that.
And a big round of applause for our special guests. Thank you both for coming. We are absolutely not paying them to be here. We are honored for their effort, and we just thank them. And we genuinely believe that your hands and feet are the hands and feet that will do this work. Our next event will be Feet in the Street on May 3rd. You can follow us on Mobilize. We will get that out. And thank you all for coming. Indulge me for one moment. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Exactly. Take that home with you. Tell everyone you